What's going on? Welcome to the Creator Factor, where we dive deep into the vibe of the creator culture, where we talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about the strategies to help you thrive as a business minded content creator. And I am your host who loves you the most, Ozeal. And today we have a very special guest in the building
Oh.
who is a certified ADHD life and business coach and the founder of It's ADHD Friendly. It's ADHDfriendly.com. Got that one. And she's not only embraced this ADHD pace, but also has mastered the art of thriving with it. And as creatives building businesses, y'all know it's often challenging. We have to jump through many hurdles to overcome and be a successful business owner, let alone also being a creative as well, both in personal and business life. So I'm excited, y'all, to kind of dig into this conversation with none other than my new friend, hailing all the way from Austin, Texas, in the building, Creator Factor fam. Let's welcome to the show, Caren Magill in the house. Caren, how you doing?
Hi, I'm so good, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I am just pumped to be here. So thank you for having me.
I'm excited because I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel. And I remember, I'll show you a little story, going down the rabbit hole of YouTube and searching ADHD. And I stumbled upon some good channels. And the reason why is because I suspected that there was something going on with my brain. There was a lot of things that were just kind of surfacing and forgetfulness and, all the symptoms that come with ADHD. And I was like, okay, I need to find my YouTuber. I need to find my person. So I went through and then I stumbled upon this amazing YouTube channel. And I was like, that's it. She gets me. This is it. This is the one. This is the one, y'all. This is the one. And here we have it. I reached out to you and you were so generous to say, yes, I will be on your podcast, which I was a bit surprised because I know you're busy, got a lot of things going on. So I'm excited to kind of dig into this conversation about the world of ADHD and of course all the work that you're doing as a coach. Let's dig into this. Let's go back, looking back a little bit.
Mhm.
Rewind.
Mhm.
What was the first time that you were suspicious about possibly having ADHD, and how did you figure the first step of embracing it? Tell us a little bit about
Mm.
that.
That's a great question, and it leads into why I'm doing what I'm doing now in terms of paying it forward.
Mhm.
I I always thought I was a little broken. I because my ADHD with most ADHDers, it starts in childhood as a developmental disorder. So, I struggle with math. I struggle with a lot of things
Mm.
as a child that, I felt like I was just a little bit off or I was a little bit broken. And then I continued to feel that way. I would say throughout my entire life, but for a long time, fitness was a big medicator for me.
Mhm.
And then I kind of hit midlife and menopause and mental pause, as I like to call it. And everything just kind of upended. And then, of course, there was 2020, which, upended everything anyway. So I was really coming back to those childhood struggles, like as a context, as an adult, but similar struggles around my brain and just not being able to focus and stuff like that. And I was a big fan of Chalene Johnson. I was following
Yeah.
her podcast, and she's also ADHD. And, she just one day recorded a podcast about, you might have ADHD or she was just talking about her own experience. And I was like, oh my God, somebody just literally spoke my cognitive experience into reality. And that was maybe it's this moment for me. So at that point, I went down a rabbit hole, as one does when they have ADHD, and started learning everything I could about it. And I was fortunate enough that my insurance covered a diagnostic process, which I get a lot of people asking me about that. Like, do you need it? And
Yeah.
it's always great if you can get it, but it's very expensive. But I was able to get it covered. So I went through the process of getting diagnosed. And this was again during 2020. So everything was a lot harder to do then. It was a multi-day process. And partly in person and partly, over the phone and like surveys, like people in my family had to fill out surveys. So it took a while. And then there was like a whole assessment piece. And then it took like 3 months in total. And during that time, I pretty much convinced myself that I had ADHD. And at that point, I was like, okay, what next? And I have been someone who's been in the creator space for a long time. I was somebody who was coaching already in the context of fitness. So I thought I'd learned about ADHD coaching, and I thought I'm just going to sign up for this because that's what you do when you have ADHD. You're impulsive. So I didn't even have my official diagnosis. It was, in that process when I signed up for the coaching program that I took, and just, embraced it from there. And I am somebody who is very curious, but in
Mhm.
a positive sense. Like I'm not Pollyanna, but I am someone who will look at something and say, well, what can I do with this, rather than woe's me. Oh, I had my woe's me moment, but I got past that really quickly. And I was like, okay, if this is who I am, what am I going to do with it? And that's why I made all the choices I made. And I pivoted my content, my coaching, everything towards ADHD, because this was the first thing. Even though fitness has been a big part of my life for a long time, this is the first thing where I feel like there is a true connection. If I could use the word dharma, I would.
Yeah.
And it just feels like what I was meant to do. And ever since then, I have been, creating content, teaching, coaching. And I have the privilege of hearing a lot of people say, I found your channel and it was like, you just spoke to me. And it's because it's the lived experience. I went through it all myself. So I speak from experience, not just like I'm not a psychologist expert. I'm somebody going through it. So I feel like that's why I resonate with my audience so much. And I just freaking love what I do now.
To dig deeper a little bit behind the inspiration though, Caren, like what would you say is like, obviously you said, okay, I'm already in the creator space doing business coaching, but I want to help other people. But is there like something like that was really pulling you to say, I really want to lean into this and help others out? Like what was it like the deep inspiration behind completely revamping your brand and kind of going all in on this?
Um, I think it started with the coaching, right? Like I was in the process of getting the diagnosis, but I convinced myself that I had it. And I had been thinking about taking a life coaching program for a long time. It had been on my
Mhm.
mind, but it didn't feel completely aligned to me. There's something that feels a little weird or squishy
Mhm.
about life coaching that never really quite pulled the trigger. But when I got this diagnosis and I learned about ADHD coaching, it was like all of these pieces, these interest pieces started clicking together. And it was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because like many ADHDers, I have like dabbled in all the things and
Mm.
gone from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing.
Yeah.
That is who I am. But this is the first time that it all clicked. And I have not doubted the decision I made once in the 3 years that this has been going on.
So you've been dedicated to this YouTube ADHD space for 3 years, you said? Has it been 3 years?
YouTube
How
came
long?
so first it was the coaching, and I
Right.
started coaching during my training as to get my hours in. So the coaching piece started first, and I think I did a podcast first. I was podcasting first, and then I started dabbling into YouTube, and it was hard at first, but it became very natural for me and I really enjoyed the medium. So YouTube I started I believe December of 2021 and my videos were very
Okay.
very bad.
Okay. Like everybody, right, who starts on
Of
YouTube
course.
in the
Yeah.
beginning, it's a bit messy. And I
Uh-huh.
ask because one of the biggest challenges, is, for a lot of creatives and even myself, and this is when I really started kind of seeing the signs when I look back, Karen, is a friend of mine, one of my best friends, we're having a conversation and he was like, Ozeal, looking back like the past 10, 15 years, man, he's like, you've done a lot, man. I'm like, but there's one thing that I've noticed that, and I'm like, really? I said, wow. And I was like thinking, oh, what else? Come on, give it to me, man. Rub my ego a little bit, man. Like, what are you talking? He's like, yeah, it's one thing that I noticed. I'm like, all right, here we go. Like, let me know. Give it to me. And he was like, you never stick with anything. You've hopped a lot. I'm like,
Yeah.
you always start something for about a year and a half, and then you bounce. I'm like, you've done
Mhm.
like multiple projects, and it was a big ego. Like it was like I felt like a sucker punch because
Yeah.
here I was thinking that I've done so many things and organized so many projects and communities and done many creator projects. And he was right. Like I started looking back here and I was like, man, you're absolutely right. I have not stuck with anything. So that's why I asked the question because I feel like that's a common challenge for a lot of creative people and people with ADHD in general is just not sticking with something for a long period of time, which impacts our relationships, right? But also, like for us creative entrepreneurs, we can't stick it out to be able to really see something flourish, right? Is
Yeah.
that something you're
Yeah. And
seeing?
it also impacts your personal identity. You know,
Yeah.
when you heard that from your friend, you kind of knew it. You knew it.
Yeah.
It hurt. Like it felt like a sucker punch because you knew it
Yeah.
was true. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes it really hard to try anything new that you're excited about because it erodes your self-trust. Like, is this just going to be the next thing where, I have equipment in a closet that I never use because I abandoned that as well? And that's probably one of the biggest struggles that we all deal with. So I know it very, very well.
Yeah, rejection sensitivity is mad
Mhm.
real, right? It's real for
Oh,
especially
yeah.
for us ADHDers, especially for creative entrepreneurs. I mean, creatives are naturally like sensitive, anyway. And then you look at the entrepreneurial side, and there's a lot of like just not having the confidence, like a double-edged sword of like, oh man, I'm here, a creative, sensitive already about my art and what I put out to the world, but now I'm this entrepreneur who has to prove to the world, and we don't take rejection very lightly. So that's something that I feel that we need to talk on. Any words of advice for creative entrepreneurs who struggle with that, Caren? That who tend to take everything personal and not deal with rejection, like it's the end of the world.
Mm. Well, there's two things there, right? Like we started with the hopping around and then
Yeah.
moving into the RSD. So let me separate those for a second and then I'll address both separately. One of the reasons why we have a tendency to hop is, we're divergent thinkers, right? Like we
Hmm.
don't think linearly. We're not the person in second grade who wants to be a doctor and then grows up and becomes a doctor and that's all they ever do, other than maybe a stamp collection. We want to be a bazillion things and we want to try all the things. And that's somewhat that is how our brain is built. And that can be detrimental in the sense that our limited time, resources, and energy can only take us so far, right? So you're I heard this analogy from somebody once who said, somebody knocked on your door and said, we buried $1 million in your front lawn. You can try 4 different tries to get it, but you can only try that. So you go out and you start digging in the first, and you only have like 24 hours to find it. So you go out and you start digging in the first hole, but you drop it because you don't think it's there. So you go to the second hole, the second hole, and the third. And like you start digging all these holes, but you've got limited time, right? So you end up with 4 half dug holes, no $1 million, and time's up and you're done. And that's like the perfect analogy of how we spread ourselves so thin and we don't actually ever meet the goal, like the goalpost or the pot of gold, because we're always trying something new.
Yeah.
So I was actually working on a video this morning around that. Like, why does that happen for us, and what can we do about it? And I won't go too far into it because that's like a whole meaty topic. But the why has to do with a lot of different things, right? Like sometimes it's because our brain craves novelty and dopamine, right? Like that's one piece of it. But then underneath that, I don't know if you could hear my pug snoring there. I apologize if you can. Underneath that, it's also the self-talk. Like I never finish
Yeah.
anything. People notice I never finish anything. I'm gonna
Yes.
like maybe half-heartedly do this thing because I know it's not really going to work anyway. But you want to try it because you like trying new things. And then it's hard the first time you come up against a road bump or rejection sensitivity, because whenever you're putting yourself out there as a creator, it's a very vulnerable thing to do. So the first time you get either bad feedback or maybe even worse, no feedback, like nobody cares, nobody likes, nobody engages, it breaks us inside. And then it's like, oh, I confirm that that's not going to work for me because I can't do anything. And then you
Yeah.
back out of that and then you move
Yeah.
into the next thing, right? Like we're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
driven by hope, but
Hmm.
we're also drained by
Yes.
negative responses. So that's a little bit about why that happens. And then just to sort of speak more fully on the rejection sensitive dysphoria, there's a factoid, and I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to try my best here. And if you Google it, you will hear it. The average ADHD child before the age of 9 has more than double the negative pieces of feedback given to them than a neurotypical child. So
Oh
it's,
wow.
you know, stop doing that. Don't be extra. Like stop running around. where's your homework? Why can't you do anything? Like when you think about all of that, there's an innate sensitivity to feedback because we've heard it all our lives and we believe it to be true based on our behaviors. But
Mm.
on the flip side of that is that's because we are square pegs trying to do the best we can, driving ourselves into round holes. And if we could just live in a world that we're just all square holes, we would be it. We would be the shit. And sorry, I don't know if I can
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I love it. I love
and
it.
we would thrive, but we don't live in a square hole society. We live in a round hole society. So we make it about ourselves and it's really not. We're just different, not
Yeah.
broken. So I hope I've addressed both of those two things.
That's the statement right there, Caren. We're different, not broken, because I remember even recently in having conversations with friends and close ones where I was just really like, man, I'm not smart enough. There's some
Mm.
loose like screws. I'm not a good partner. I suck at entrepreneurship. Is this even something I should pursue? When it comes to being a creator, am I really that good of a podcast host? Am I really that good on video? So there's a constant question. Now I do know that these are the things that light me up. Like I'm focused, like
Mhm.
I'm jazzed. So I know this is what I love, and creating communities. I do know that for a fact, but excuse me, I still find myself constantly questioning myself. So I do feel like that self-talk and that sensitivity is real and something I'm constantly like just having this tug of war with. And I feel like a lot of ADHDers feel the same way. So again, I love the message of, we're not broken, because there's a lot of times where we do feel like we're broken, but just saying, hey, we're a bit different. One of for our and switching topics here, for our creators who are building businesses, one of the biggest challenges that I see is, creative entrepreneurs staying on task. We're not like, one task and we're done. As we know, we don't finish things. I'm curious to know, are there any methods, like any effective strategies or methods that you share with your clients and helping creative entrepreneurs stay focused and actually get things done?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot. And I will focus this around the creator space, especially, but also
Hmm.
thinking about entrepreneurs that are not necessarily creator first.
Yeah.
But I have found to be super helpful is first accepting that, my brain works differently. So I'm not a linear thinker, right? And the way my energy works, it's like this. If you're just listening, it's like up and down, right? Like my energy is unpredictable day to day. So I first have a behavior that I do every week, and I do it. I've been doing it for three years now, and that is every Sunday I sit down and I plan the week ahead. And I don't do time blocking in the natural sense where, like you sit down with a calendar and say, from 9:30 to 11:30, I'm going to work on, my YouTube
Hmm.
scripts,
Hmm. Hmm.
because from 9:30 to 11:30, I may not feel like it. I may not feel like, I may not even feel like sitting in my office. So I have the privilege of having a flexible schedule in the sense that I know content has to be done at the beginning of the week to prepare it for editing to be done by the end of the week. So I have a rhythm where I plan my week on Sunday, and I
Okay.
know content Monday, Tuesday is rough cut, then goes to editor on Wednesday. Any appointments I have are always on Wednesdays because I tend to forget appointments. And I have a flow to my week, and
Okay.
I have tasks within those, my week. And because I theme my days, I generally know what needs to get done because I can't rely on my memory. I can't even rely that much on my memory to look at my to-do list. I think we all struggle with that. So I have to have my to-do list in front of me all the time because you always have to externalize your thinking. Don't rely on your short-term memory because your executive function is
Yeah.
impaired and you got to think outside of your head. So I've designed the schedule so that it works for me. And then I'm always checking my schedule throughout the week, and I have prompts to remind me to check my schedule. My schedule, like I said, is literally on my screen, and when it's not on my screen, it's literally written on paper. When I say schedule, it's the tasks that need to get done that day,
Hmm.
and I give myself airspace to move tasks when they're too energetically expensive and I need to push them a day or two. Like sometimes if I'm feeling off, I don't want to create content. So I have space to do that. And I've always got like a few content pieces in like a holding background. Like if I needed to take a day off or I couldn't record for a week, there's something I could put there. So because my commitment is Fridays are my published day for the video podcast, and then my newsletter goes out on Sunday. So as long as I know I hit those metrics, then I know that I have done everything I need to do, like the bare minimum, like the non-negotiable. And then anything I can do on top of that, I will do. So for a creator out there, what I would recommend doing is, first of all, having your weekly planning routine.
Mhm.
At the end of the week, review your week so you know how you did and what needs to be moved forward. Check your plan every single day, have it in front of you. And also have your build your structure or your scaffolding in a way that works for you. Don't build it in a way that works for the algorithms,
Mm.
or what you hear a coach telling you to do. Like you have to, post on Instagram 3 times a day. I would want to I'd want to jump off a bridge. So you have to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
And if you can
Yeah.
do those things, you will stick with it. But the most important thing is, if you are a creator or an entrepreneur, you are doing something that, as you said earlier, lights you up and gives you energy. And that's
Yeah.
important to you. Because if it's not, you will poop out on it. You've got a limited runway when it's just in the moment sort of interest. It has to be something that has long-term durability.
Yeah, I've done the planners, Caren. I've done I don't know how many downloads I have on like productivity calendars, Google Calendar. I mean, I've done the time blocking, the Pomodoro technique, and I've realized that even looking back, even now, like I was looking at my calendar and I was like, oh man, I'm still doing too. It's still scattered, like it's still not dialed in. I still feel like it's like hour I'm gonna do podcast planning, and then the next hour it's like constantly switching, and I'm like, I don't think my brain needs that. I'm constantly doing different tasks on different days. So I may have to, like, I think the whole theme approach for ADHDers is the way to go, where that's all you focus rather than constantly changing the channel throughout the day. I feel like that's been messing me up. And I know a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Task switching
Woo.
takes a lot of cognitive load. So
Yeah.
if I were you, not knowing much about your lifestyle or anything, but I know that you're a podcaster. I think you're a
Mhm.
podcast coach. So
Mhm.
let's say like a lot of what your work is are appointments. So let's say you have like 2 days a week where all you do is appointments, whether it's like one day is clients and one day is podcast interviews. And then you know that you have your core content and your core obligations done. Then you build another day for, I don't know if you do your own editing or whatever else is
Mhm.
in your process, but I would not scatter those things. Like have an appointment on Tuesday and an appointment on Friday, like
Yeah.
one's in the morning, one's in the
That's this week.
don't do that. Yeah,
Okay.
don't do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Build barriers and structure for yourself so that it's less task switching, but
Mhm.
also less having to remember, do I have appointments today? Or can I
Mhm.
go to my kid's baseball game today? Because you always know
Yeah.
Wednesdays are podcasts, Thursdays are clients. You know what I mean? Whatever it is for you, you got to simplify it and streamline it so that it's less cognitive load.
What tools are you using right now, Carrie? I know you have. By the way, we're going to make sure we link it up in the show
Mhm.
notes. You have Notion templates, but I've tried like Asana and stuff, and maybe I'm just not using it right. That's why I want to dig into some of the templates, because I feel like it's very ADHD friendly. So like, what tools are you using to kind of keep you organized? If you had to like name your top 3 or top 4.
Right. Well, mine is definitely Notion. And I love
Notion.
Notion because it's like Play-Doh, digital Play-Doh. You can build it to be whatever
Never
you
heard
want
that.
it
That's a
to
good one.
be. Oh, yeah. No. And it's like a big thing for ADHDers is things get boring after a while and then they become white noise and we ignore them. With Notion, you can resparkleize anything. So, yes, I do have templates for business owners and also just for people who want to get clear on their goals and track towards them.
Mhm.
But it, the program, you want to think about what your needs are in your life. Like maybe you don't need Notion. Maybe what you need is a big calendar on your fridge where the whole family can see it, because it depends on your lifestyle,
Mm.
who you work with, and who needs to know where you are at any given time, right? So you want to think about those things, but the tool itself is not as important as the commitment to use the tool. So you said to me, oh,
Mm.
I try all these tools and they never work. Try just picking whatever tool you think might work. And instead of focusing so much on the tool, focus on your behavior and habits. Every Sunday, you're planning your week. Every 3 times a day, you're checking your plan. Every Friday, you're reviewing your week. and then Sunday you start again, and because it's more about the behavior than it is the tool.
Yeah.
And when you can commit to that behavior and make it a habit, it doesn't even matter what the tool is really.
I'm curious to know, Karen, because you're a coach, right? So you're handling clients. You're also a content creator. You're very consistent on YouTube. What does your life look like in regards to, obviously I know how you theme, but in regards to how you prioritize, like what are your top, do you have like a top three? Because again, I'm asking this because, as you know, as creative entrepreneurs with ADHD, that's the challenge, is like we're doing a lot of busy work and ends up being like a lot of admin, a lot of research. We go down the rabbit hole and you look back and you're like, why haven't I completed that big rock, that big goal? So I'm curious to know, like, what do you prioritize throughout the week?
So the first thing there is that prioritization is an executive function, and ADHD is an executive function
Yeah,
impairment. So when we think, okay, if we're not great at prioritization, that means that we can't look at like a number of different tasks in our head and say this one should go first, second, third, fourth, and then
right.
do them. Be great if we could. So the way I eliminate as much of that thinking as I can. So my weeks are very similar. So I kind of gave you the theme idea.
Yeah.
And then I also work on a workflow. So first of all, the two sides of my business are coaching and content creation. And part of the content creation is selling my programs and digital templates and stuff like that. So that's one piece, right? And I have a lot of control over that because, Monday I create a YouTube script, and either I record on Monday or I record on Tuesday, but I have a raw edit that I have by the end of day Tuesday, which then goes off to the editor. But I also use Descript. And as far as I'm concerned, Descript can take all my money because they've made my life so easy.
Pretty awesome tool.
I,
Yeah.
yeah. So I take all of my transcript from Descript, I copy and paste it into Notion, and I have Notion AI. So I have the paid version of Notion, and I say to AI, write a 1500, like I have a script for that. I tell it
Oh,
to take my script and turn it into a blog post, Pinterest pin descriptions, a LinkedIn, post, a Twitter thread. Now I don't necessarily use all of those because all of those platforms are secondary to me. I don't make them a priority, but I have a workflow that it's like a template. Everything in my life is templated, so I don't need to prioritize.
yeah.
So everything starts with that YouTube script, and then it flows from there, all the content for the week, so that by Friday, I've got my YouTube video done. My podcast is just my YouTube audio burned into a podcast. So I'm not adding anything extra there. And they both go live on Friday. And then on Friday, I also write my email, which AI helps me. And then I also just add a little bit more personal stuff to it. And
Hmm.
it's also a template. So that all gets plugged in on Fridays and scheduled for Sunday morning. So I know that once on Friday, once my newsletter is scheduled, my work for the week is done. And I didn't have to prioritize anything because
Wow.
it's all templated. And then when it comes to the
Yeah.
coaching side of my business, I only take clients on Wednesday. And because
Mm.
I'm traveling a lot lately, I paused coaching for Q1. But when I get back into it, it'll only be on Wednesdays that I coach. So there's no fear of me waking up on a Wednesday morning and, deciding I want to go play pickleball and then realize, oh crap, I've got a bunch of calls. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I could do that. My brain might want to do that, but because I know Wednesday's my appointment day, I will, make myself look like a human and be camera ready all day.
It's like a Wonder Woman, like Superwoman here. I mean, I feel like you dialed in your workflow, and that's my biggest weakness, I will say, is
Yeah.
systems and processes. So I'm curious to know, I mean, because you're challenged with ADHD, and you managed through how to navigate through this. How did you get to that point though? Like, what did it look like prior? Like, did you have to hire a coach? What's the secret sauce, Karen? Because I mean, you got it
Yeah.
dialed in. I'm
I do
impressed.
have it dialed in, but remember that I also went through a coaching program. So I
Mm.
have the tools from that experience, and it was ADHD specific. So I
Okay.
learned a ton about ADHD from like the neuroscientific perspective. But then like a coaching program, you understand the neuroscience at a layman level. But then where the coaching really comes in is you start to understand, how do you layer compensatory methods on top of what you now know about ADHD? And also because I'm in my 50s, so I've been living with this for a while. This is not my first rodeo. So the coaching program really helped me to understand the tools, which I then use in my practice, but I also use for myself, right? So going back before my training and my understanding of ADHD, I was a hot mess express. But I've had like 4.5 businesses before this one, and none of them worked because I would quit my corporate job, and I would quit my job because I hated my job and I wanted to start this business. So then I would sit down day one, at my desk, like now I'm a business owner, and not have a clue what I'm doing because there's no planning, there's no strategy, there's no nothing. And I'm just sitting there. I remember one of my businesses on my day one, I'm like, cleaning the crumbs off my keyboard going, I have no idea how or what I'm supposed to do. And I got pretty far with that business, like all things considered. But because I had no support or no awareness, they all kind of just either failed, or one I actually managed to sell, but none of them were a great success. And at this stage, it's not even about having a successful business, although I do feel like I have a successful business and I'm enjoying it. It's really about having the systems and strategies
Yes.
in place in order to keep me moving forward, because nobody else is going to do it. I don't have a boss, right? So I had to get these in place. And with my level of understanding that I have now, I was able to do that.
I wish I would have met you before, because that was pretty much me saying, "Hey, I'm done with corporate." Got laid off. Actually got laid off, and then went into I was freelancing for many, many years. But I was like, "What do I do with this time? Like, how do I prioritize? How do I run this business?" And it was tough. I mean, for a good 10 years.
Okay, one more thing that I want to put a pin on when it comes to that, because I went through that
Okay.
as well. I
Okay.
think there's also, I don't know if you want to call it magical thinking or skewed expectations, that we leave corporate, a job where, we had a job description and there was specific expectations of us, and we learned it pretty quickly because somebody trained us, hopefully, and we did the job. Then we leave that very highly structured environment to create something on all our own. And the expectation is that, oh, we'll just figure it out. Like I've never owned a business before, but I'll figure it out. Or I have owned a business and that didn't work, but I'll figure it out. But we're not actually taking, and this, I'm speaking for myself now, I'm not putting words in
Mm.
your mouth. We're not taking the steps to learn what you have to do as an entrepreneur. There's just an expectation that
Yeah.
we're naturally going to know it. It's like lifting up the hood of your car saying, oh, I'll figure out how to fix it.
Mm.
If you don't know how to fix a car, then don't expect that you're going to know how to fix a car and then consider yourself a failure when you can't fix the car. Entrepreneurship is a skill. So expect
Good
that
point.
you're going to need support. You're going to need education. You're going to need learning. You're going to need years of trying things and failing. Have that expectation going into it. And you'll either decide you don't want to do it, which is perfectly fine, or you'll decide this is an important enough experience for me that I do want to do it. And you'll go in with the right expectation, and you won't beat yourself up about it the entire freaking time.
Wow, that's perspective. I appreciate you dropping that on us. How do you stay grounded? So whenever you're not working and doing all the things on YouTube and creating all this amazing content, how do you stay grounded? What's kind of like your wellness flow in life?
I'm giggling because it's like, what makes you think I stay grounded?
We never do. I mean, this is two questions.
You ask my husband how I stay grounded, and he'll be like, her? He's actually he's like my rock. So
That's
he's
beautiful.
part of it. But how do I stay
Mm.
grounded? I do practice yoga a lot in my Notion template that I use. I have a health tracker, and there's 5 non-negotiables every day. I get 10,000 steps, workout, which can be yoga or something else,
Mhm.
meditate, do a heart coherence exercise. And then I also just track my mood as well. So if I do those things, and I'm not 100% with them every single day, but I know that on the days where I don't do them, I'm less effective, I'm less grounded, I'm less happy. But on the days where I do get all that stuff done, check, 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 I'm my best self. And also sleep is so important.
Yeah,
Sleep and hydration. Like, I am a
I see
ninja when it
you. I
comes to
know, and I
hydration.
see you.
Yeah, I'm holding up like 2 glasses here, cups, like massive things that are side of my head. I've always got water on the go. And I sleep like in between 7 and 9 hours. I track it. I have a
Mhm.
Fitbit, and I have this Ring thing that I'm using now. I'm very data driven because it just helps me understand what's going on with my own body. So that is how I stay grounded.
Do
And
you
then the
have a
other times
time
I don't.
do you have a time where you unplug, where you're like, "All right, no screen time, get these headphones off of me. I'm gonna just kinda decompress and go to bed." What's the kind of the night evening routine looking like?
I would love to tell you that I'm good at that, and I'm absolutely not. At night is when I'm my primary strength, like my first exciting strength and thing that I love to do in my spare time is learn new things. And I'm usually buying, entrepreneur courses and things like that to improve my skill set. And at night, like between 7 and 9 is when my husband and I are on the couch. And if we're not watching TV, then I am watching some sort of training. He thinks I'm a nerd, but I love it. And that is how I wind down. So I usually am either listening to a podcast or, learning something. Sometimes I'm scrolling Instagram, but that's less and less these days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't unplug a lot, and I should.
I've noticed that I'm always with my headphones on. Even my neighbors are like, "Dude, you're always, plugged in. What are you doing?" Even it's like 7 or 8 walking the dog. I'm like, I'm always listening to a podcast or audiobook. I'm always learning, consuming something. And the doctor pointed that out. He's like, actually, you can't like that's a way for you to suppress. And I'm like, that's the way for you need that noise. Your brain is still going. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, yeah, that's an indicator that that's the ADHD brain. I'm like, oh my God.
Mhm.
I didn't
Oh,
know that.
totally, totally. But one other thing that this is just a thought that I had this morning as I
Yeah.
was working on the material for this, managing multiple interests. The other question to ask yourself is why what is it about this need to constantly consume external material? What is it that's driving that? And what is the unmet need behind it? Because when I think about that, I think, oh, I'm always trying to find the answers in my life that will make things like click and just be
Mhm.
easier to create peace and calm in my body.
Yeah.
But then I remember nothing out here. There's no book, there's no podcast, there's no YouTube video that I can watch or consume that's going to fix the angst that I have in my body. I can only do that. That's a completely 100% an inside job. So if you find that you are over consuming,
Yeah.
then you might want to ask yourself, explore that. Like, what is the unmet need here? Is it that I'm afraid of silence? Is it that I'm trying to look for something to create
Mm.
calmness or peace or have more control in my life? Because if it's the answer is a latter,
Yeah.
that control won't happen from an external source. And I can prove that because it hasn't happened for you yet.
Right.
And you're
No,
consuming a
absolutely.
lot of
No.
material,
Uh,
right?
yeah.
It has to be
Yeah.
from inside.
Interesting. Thank you for for throwing me that question because that's a deep question, and I think it's a question
Mm,
that our listeners and watchers need to ask themselves. If you struggle with the same thing as I think that's the reason. Personally, I think a lot of us could probably agree is that we're looking for that unlock. We're looking for that secret sauce, that secret thing that's gonna get us to the next level. But you're absolutely right. It's like if that's the case, then what's happening? Are you just consuming just to consume? But I feel like there's a little bit of FOMO, going on. So
mhm.
serious of your FOMO going on there. So constantly staying plugged in. All right, so this has been amazing. So good. I love like just the scheduling and the productivity and just some of the things that we can do from a mindfulness approach for our creators. And I always ask all of our guests if there's one creator factor that
Mhm.
that every creator should learn and master. Caren, what would that be?
Oh, you sent me this question earlier and I noodled on it and then it dropped out of my brain. So I'm going to refer to what I just said. I think that a superpower for all creators, ADHD or otherwise, is to find ways to connect with your inner voice, your intuition, your gut sense, whatever you want to call that inner knowing. Because as creators, our inclination is to follow trends and follow, what the algorithms want and deliver that, which is what we hear, very often is the thing you're supposed to do. But then we just become like carbon copies of each other. And that's not creative. You know, taking a trending song on Instagram and poking words at it like everybody else does, that's just doing what everybody else does. You know, like if you want to be a creator, that means that you have to have a connection that starts within that you then express externally. And it has to start with a passion from within. And you have to have an internal a dialogue with that inner knowing, because that's where your creativity, that's the source of your creativity. And at the end of the day, whether you're an entrepreneur or a creator, creativity is at the heart of all of it. And if you don't have a connection to inside, into the internal piece that feeds your creativity, then all you're doing is poking at word bubbles on Instagram and using trending audio, which I think is a waste of time personally. So that's my thought.
Love, double love. Oh my God, that was amazing. Amazing. It's ADHDfriendly.com. Caren, it's been a little slice of heaven to have you on the pod. And once again, thank you for being on the show. And from somebody who discovered you and just trying to find answers to these questions that I had after, I was like, what's happening to my brain? What's happening in my life? I just want to just give you, your flowers for showing up consistently, for doing the good work, for doing the things that are not only impacting us, but you're also impacting, as I shared earlier, generations behind us, that we're going to be able to have this education, to have a better understanding of how to navigate through ADHD, and to be able to also share that type of knowledge, and we can become better parents, better human beings, and just produce and be creative, super creatives in this world, and contribute more impact and influence with all of our audience. So I just want to thank you for doing, not just creating content, but really doing a great service for humanity. So I just wanted to thank you and give you your flowers for that. I really do appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will say, I selfishly, I've said this a few times. I've never met an ADHD or a fellow ADHDer that I didn't love. Like, we are good people. So I do it because we are good people and we deserve as much support and understanding and awareness and advocacy as we can get, which is why I just love what you said about your son. So that's why I'm here, and I get something from it too. So I appreciate your kind words, and I get as much as I give, if not more.
I received that. Thank you for the conversation.